Hello and welcome back to BizCast. Today I'm joined by Sam. Hello,
Hi guys,
Sam.
I'm Sam.
Sam, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Sam. I'm a third year maths student at Bristol, final year. I did a few spring weeks in first year, second year, and then did a summer internship at Barclays, and now have the full-time offer. I also created the Bristol Application Tracker, which I hope many of you have been using. If you don't know what it is, it's essentially an online spreadsheet that outlines all the available spring weeks and summer internships, and tracks their opening dates, so you can always apply early.
Pretty useful tool. So today we're going to be talking about the application process and a guide on how to create an effective application. So Sam, could you just outline what the internship application cycle is like, both for spring and for summer?
Sure. So summer internships applications, they've been open a while. They're open as early as June. Spring weeks begin sort of October time, so right about now they're kicking off. You always put in a CV, so you need to make sure it's up to scratch. You'll sometimes put in a cover letter, sometimes there's written questions that you have to answer, but you'll put in your application, and oftentimes you get an online test. So this can be situational judgment tests asking what would you do in this situation. Maths tests are very frequent, reading comprehension tests. They can often be pretty luck based, but you need to make sure that you're doing well in them. It's usually just a pass or fail, and so if you get past it, you're on to the HireVue stage, which for those of you who don't know is a one-way interview. So they'll put on the screen, they'll ask you a question, why do you want to work at Fidelity? And you'll have to sit there and record yourself answering the question, which is just a super awkward experience, just talking to yourself. But you'll film your answers, and oftentimes for spring weeks, that'll be the end of the process. They'll give out offers from there. So for me, Macquarie, Barclays, Fidelity, they all ended at that stage. For other spring weeks and for all summer internships, you'll get some interviews, so actually speaking with someone. This will often be a first round interview on over a telephone, 15 minutes, purely just motivational questions, pretty simple stuff. And then from there, for summer internships, it's a bit lengthier. You can get more interviews. They get harder, more technical. For me, I had FT partners, gave me 5 rounds, and then rejected me.
It's painful.
Yeah, that would real hurt. But yeah, after that, it's just interview after interview, and then you might get an assessment centre at the end, which includes sort of group projects. I actually didn't have any of those. I think that's about it.
Cool. I think it's also worth touching on who are those things available for. So you obviously have the spring and you have the summer and you have the grad programs. At what point should you be applying to each individual internship?
Sure. So the HR answer to this is that for summer internships, you should be 1 year out of graduation, so in your penultimate year. And for spring weeks, you should be 2 years out from graduation, so in your first year of a 3-year course, second year of a 4-year course, third year of a PhD, doesn't matter, as long as you're 2 years out, right? The reality is you can bend that a little bit. So say you're a second year student on a 3-year course, but say you've got no springs, you have no work experience, you're just starting off now. It's probably better that you apply to spring weeks and you can just put on your CV, I intend to do a master's. Suddenly you count as being 4 years out. 2 years out, sorry.
Yeah.
But in reality, you're not. But they really don't mind, and it's the same as for example, you're on a 4-year course, right?
Yeah. So I'm on a 4-year course doing mechanical engineering. So spring cycle is the one I'm applying for at the moment.
But you could also apply to summers, right?
But I could also apply to summers.
You could put that you're doing a bachelor's in engineering. Now you're on a 3-year course, and you can apply to summers. So you can really just sort of work it for yourself. But the standard procedure is first years do spring, second years do summer.
Yeah. So Sam, you touched on the first stage being CV and cover letter. What important pointers would you give people for making sure that their CV is both refined and their cover letters tailored to the firm they're applying to?
Sure. So for CVs, I'm going to try and keep this advice as sort of unique as possible. You can find so much CV advice online. I'll skip over all the main points, keep it to 1 page, start each bullet point with a verb. Don't have that paragraph at the start, the personal profile thing. Make sure you have an interests line, make sure you have society placements on there, make sure your A-levels are on there. These are all things that you could watch a 5-minute YouTube video on.
Yeah.
I think I want to give some more sort of niche advice. So one trick that I do, and I advise everyone to do it, is the interests line. Make sure there's something super quirky on there, just weird, to be honest. So my one is sandwiches. For reference, I don't care about sandwiches. I have no interest in them. But I've just done a little bit of research on sandwiches. I've looking at different recipes. There's not that much to research, right? But it comes up in so many interviews. I've literally tracked it. It's about 60% of non-first rounds They bring it up every time, and I have this rehearsed script that I deliver, which is like it's a way of showing personality, really. And like my UBS offer, for example, that was purely off the sandwiches chat. Like
Really?
I had 2 interviews. Like one of them was technical, and I flopped it. It was like the worst interview of my life. And the other one was like motivational, and we just chat about sandwiches the whole time. And that's where the offer came from.
Yeah, like you say, it's worth having that niche pointer that differentiates you from a crowd, because so many people are applying. So many people have those same skills. They're all predicted firsts or 2-1s. They're all out here. They're all doing part of this finance society or something. Just having that niche thing that sets you apart is super applicable, and just make sure you have it, basically. Show your personality.
Yeah, my advice is go on Google, search turtles or something like that, and just do like an hour research on turtles. Just 1 hour. Study, where can you find turtles? Can you keep them as pets? What do they eat? How long do they live? And then just craft this little scripts that you'll give. Because they will ask you, tell me about turtles, why you're interested, and you can deliver this great speech and show personality. Other things you can do is like put a football team on your interest line. I don't do it because I don't watch football. But if you support a team and your interviewer also supports that team, like it's easy money. Like you've got the offer. With cover letters, I think there's a pretty standard structure that you're told to follow. It's why the company, why the division, and why you. You can follow that and it's fine. I think cover letters are probably the less important part of an application, so don't waste too much time tailoring. If you do want to be that sort of standout candidate who has a great cover letter, you can do a little bit more research into a company. So oftentimes the bit that you really tailor is the why this company, right? And so most people are saying, you have a great ESG initiative, or I saw this recent deal that you did. And those are all great things, like don't feel bad if you're putting them. You can go one step ahead and talk about stuff that you wouldn't really find just off a Google search. And so, for example, if I was to talk about BlackRock, and say I was applying to one of their private equity funds, I could say, okay, I saw you raise this latest fund. I spoke to one person in the fund. I recognise that you have this risk tolerance, this target IRR. You have a certain focus for this vertical, and that's something I'm super interested in. Things like that are things that show that you understand finance
and actually care about the firm.
Exactly, and it shows that like you've done your research, you care about finance, you understand what you're saying. But again, like you don't have to do that. It's not necessary. I want to reiterate, like they're not the most important part of an application. But yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So Sam, what sort of resources would you say are very useful when preparing to apply for a firm, or also preparing for those individual stages like the online assessment, HireVues, or telephone interviews?
Sure. I would say before you're even making your applications, I'm biased because I run it, but the Bristol Application Tracker is super useful for this stuff. I know as a first year, like it was super daunting trying to find spring weeks, and I was frantically searching on Google. I could find like 3. Having this spreadsheet that keeps track of when they open is really useful, so I'd advise using that. I am sponsored by the next one, but I would say Job Test Prep is actually, like, genuinely, even if I wasn't sponsored, I'd vouch for it as well. I would be saying that they are really useful. There's one other alternative, Assessment Day, that I know. I'll explain what they are. So they essentially help you prepare for these online tests, the maths test, the situational judgment tests, and I'm historically awful at those. Still I'm not great, but I've definitely improved using these tools. I'd say Job Test Prep is probably better than Assessment Day. Assessment Day is cheaper, so you make the call.
And it's nice because Job Test Prep in particular tailors it specifically to the assessment you're taking with the firm. So I did a Deutsche Bank application, and funnily enough, the SJT questions that I did on JTP were pretty much the exact same as the ones that I did for Deutsche Bank. So it's super useful, super handy, and it just gives you that edge, I guess, in terms of preparing for them and actually going out and answering.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Blackstone run like biometrics tests, they call them, and Job Test Prep have just completely ripped them off. They've got an exact replica of the test. It's crazy. So yeah, super recommend them. But yeah, I think in terms of other tools, I think Capital IQ is a niche one that people are probably, I think, a bit scared to use because it's a bit like you actually use it on the job. But if you're looking to research like M&A deals, so something to put in a cover letter, for example, or you want an interview coming up, Capital IQ is great for screening for these deals. So you just punch in the company name, so say like Barclays, and you just search M&A transactions. It'll give you all the M&A transactions they worked on, loads of information, financials on them, so super useful tool. But other than that, I would just say just grind out YouTube videos. People like Afsar Hussain are great, on the beginners level. There's High Finance Graduate is really good for technical questions. But do your own search. Find finance YouTubers. I found that at the beginning, when I was starting off my finance journey, I think that was what was really, really useful.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's all about, you don't have to be smart to get Spring Weeks. It's not an intelligence game. There's so many really smart people at Oxbridge, yet you never see them on Spring Weeks.
Yeah.
Because it's about gaming the application system, and I think the YouTube videos teach how to do that.
Yeah. Also, it's very useful, I'll just add as a side note, that before a HireVue, which can be quite an awkward experience filming yourself, actually just go through the process, even though it might seem stupid, of recording yourself on your phone, practice those sorts of answers. And another tool that's really useful is get in the group chats. There are loads of massive communities out there that are talking about their applications. It helps you keep on track of what people are applying to. And also, there are scenarios where you're in one of those communities and someone says, oh, I've done the Deutsche Bank HireVue, for example, or the Barclays HireVue. And these are the sort of questions that come up. So it's super useful to get involved in that sort of thing. Make sure you're in those group chats. I know there's one directly linked to the Bristol Tracker.
Yeah, we've got about 10 group chats.
Yeah, actually,
it's like 5,000 collective members. It's crazy. So do join in. And yeah, there are constantly people saying, anyone done this interview? Anyone done this one? And you ask it, I rinsed that in first and second year. I would always put it on a chat. Someone replies in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. Here are the questions. It's super useful. Again,
it's the game in the applications thing, and because you're all part of this community, you're actually trying to help each other out as opposed to being in competition with each other. So I think that resonates well as well.
Yeah, and I think the HireVue thing, but I've run out of iCloud storage. My camera roll, I think collectively we'll have a day's worth of recorded interviews. Actually 24 hours worth of me just filming myself. It's actually that's nerdy. You don't have to do 24 hours, but just do film yourself doing it in preparation for HireVues and interviews. I think it's super useful.
Yeah. So further to the application cycle, Sam, how useful would you say it is to attend those sort of insight events and those networking events and actually network in general?
Sure.
Before going and getting a job, and how can that affect your career prospects afterwards?
I think it's probably overstated a little bit how useful it is. I think people often watch these American YouTube videos and they'll say, yeah, you have to network to get in, you need a referral. And in the US, that's true for sure. In the UK, referrals are really not very common unless it's a very good friend of yours who works there or a family friend or something. I've heard of it happen for sure, but it's much less common, especially with the big companies. If you get a referral at Goldman Sachs, nothing's changing. It doesn't matter unless your dad is David Solomon. But for the boutiques, maybe it happens a little bit more. But I wouldn't make that the focus of your way to get in. It's more of just if you do know someone, you can make the most of it. Yeah. I would say with networking, peer-to-peer networking is being by far the most valuable and rewarding experience. I would honestly say my two best mates I met through finance. One's JP, one's City now. And I would never have met them if I didn't go to these networking events. I met them at SEO London actually. Yeah. And I think having a peer-to-peer network is great for making friends. It's also great for your applications. Being able to chat to people, discuss things. I learned so much from my friends. Who admittedly are much smarter than I am. And it's just that I think that's the best part of networking. I think a little caveat to what I said earlier, if you are a first year student, you can network into a smaller company. So these companies, I did it for my first year internships, was very small companies. They don't have a formal internship scheme. And it was probably less networking. It was more just cold emailing saying, would you be interested in an intern? Yeah. You can call it networking. I would then go in and chat to them. And they like me. So that's, if you're looking for an internship that way, it can be done. With the bigger companies, less so, I'd say.
But the most important thing, like you say, is going to these sort of events and these initiatives such as SEO, which is Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, is a useful way to meet people who are in the same boat and also have technical information that you can just pass off each other, even if it's just have a conversation that's strictly finance. It's nice to have that other avenue, talk to someone, understand what they're doing in the application process, and both build together from each other's knowledge.
If you got imposter syndrome, which if you're in first year, and anything common. Like me, you probably will. Speaking to peers makes that all go away. You realise we're all in the same. I don't know if I can swear. We're all in the same situation. It's so yeah. I mean, I think it's really good and really healthy. And business is a great way to do that.
Yeah, reach out to the committee, come to the events, chat to people afterwards. It's a super useful way, and also chat to your peers, like Sam said. Super useful. Okay, Sam. So I think to round it off, it's worth saying what's your overriding piece of advice for someone who's going out and approaching a spring or a summer application?
Sure. I think from a practical standpoint, just apply early. I think that is super important. I think on the Evercore Spring, the HR told us we only accepted people who applied on day one.
Wow.
It's really, really, it's really competitive. It's not usually as bad as Evercore, but the earlier you apply, the better your chances are. So really get in there early. I think from a mentality standpoint, I touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
It's just recognizing that it's very luck based, especially for spring week. So if you are applying now, say if you're applying for summers now and you haven't got anything, you've got no interviews, got nothing going on, don't worry about it. It's really not your fault.
Yeah.
Probably it may be your fault if your CV is wrong. But if you've done everything right, it's nothing against you. It's just luck based.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side of that, when it gets to an interview room, it is all on you. And if you don't get the next round or you don't get the offer, you've gone wrong somewhere. And so it's good to just go back, reflect on what went wrong. Maybe go consult people, do some mock interviews with people.
Yeah.
If that's an issue. But for the most part, don't get imposter syndrome. Everyone has no idea what they're doing, or no one has any idea what they're doing. And to be honest, it's so luck based. So really don't beat yourself up until you fail an interview, and then start beating yourself up.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam.
Yeah, no worries.
Cheers.